Welcome back. Well, communist China is responding this morning to the United States shooting down the massive stratospheric surveillance balloon, which was able to travel across much of the country this week and hover above several U.S. military installations, some of which are home to U.S. intercontinental missile silos. The balloon said to be sending data back to the CCP in real time as it traveled. But the CCP's brazenness does not stop there. Now it is claiming that it is now reserving the right to further reaction because of its so-called discontent with the U.S.'s reaction to the surveillance balloon. Joining me right now with the impact to America and what the U.S.'s response should be to China's surveillance balloons is the ranking member of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He is a member of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. He is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, thanks very much for being here this morning. First, a word on China's response. What could they do, given the fact that they are reserving the right for further reaction?
You know, I think it's appalling. If they want to let us know that it's an accident, don't you think they would want to apologize? The fact that they've already got their back up and they're resisting and talking about retaliation doesn't sound like much of an apology. If there is an innocent explanation for this, and it doesn't seem that there is at this point, but if there were, they should be apologizing. But either way, the Biden administration should have the Chinese ambassador come in to speak to the Secretary of State, and there should be a full examination of the question. With regard to what they should have done, you know, we need a commander-in-chief that's able to respond and a national defense that is able to respond within seconds to minutes to penetration of our airspace. So this sort of long drawn out that we let this drift over the ocean to Alaska, across Canada, and then when they finally decided to do something, it still took them 4 more days. This really is probing our defenses in a way. Even if there was no surveillance on board, they've gotten a great deal of information as to how sluggish the Biden administration is in their response. So if you decide to shoot it down a week later, you probably could have made that decision a lot quicker when it was over a deserted part of either Alaska or before it crossed the coast of Alaska. So this looks very, very weak in the eyes of our enemy, and I think was a huge mistake. But at this point, moving forward, what they need to do is they need to demand a full apology and explanation. If it was supposedly civilian, they should feed us all the data they took in and show us what the balloon was absorbing. And if they're not going to show us that, we tend not to trust that they're telling us the truth.
Well, I don't understand why we are so weak toward our number one adversary. Is it because Joe Biden is compromised with all of the tens of millions of dollars he's taken in? How do you explain to Congress, you know, you all have not had one hearing on the origins of COVID-19. I mean, you have not had one hearing in the Senate on the origins of COVID-19. Now you have some senators, Mark Warner and others, trying to, investigate TikTok. You have been all over trying to get to the bottom of COVID-19. But why do you see such a weak response from the Congress and from this president?
You know, it's perplexing. Over 6 million people died, and some people say as many as 15 million people died, and we haven't had one hearing. If you tell Democrats that baby's plastic in the baby bottle is causing cancer, they've probably had 25 hearings on this. But 15 million people die worldwide, at least 1 million Americans died, and not one hearing. Some of it is conflict of interest. We have many scientists in our country and around the world who are funded by our government, but they're also funded by the Chinese government directly. Some of this is not fully known because they're not disclosing this. When I asked Dr. Fauci in committee about this, he said it was none of my business and that a law protected these people. We know that 1,800 scientists in the NIH received $193 million. This is not chump change. This is a good deal of money. We need to know which companies are paying them, and they should not be on any committees approving. So if they work for Pfizer or Moderna and they get a couple $100,000 a year in royalties, they can't honestly sit on a committee approving these vaccines. So there's a lot that needs to be known, and I'm still trying very hard to get Democrats to come on board. Once we can get one Democrat to sign a document request, the NIH, I think, will start to honor their commitment to the American people and release this information.
So it's all about money then. It's about the money people receive, just the way Wall Street wants to keep investing in the Chinese companies that are tied to the Chinese military because they're making money on it.
It is about money, but it's interesting that I think there's an in-between solution where we don't, have an embargo and no trade with China. I'm not for that. But at the same time, I'm not for sending them any money. We still send research money over there. And what the House Intelligence Committee released in an unclassified report about a month ago was that our money is going to U.S. universities and then it's going to military research in China. Not even civilian research, but actual military research. The Academy of Military Medical Sciences in China gets money from U.S. universities. And Fauci would say, nothing to see here because there's an intermediary. And he says, oh, because we subcontracted, it doesn't count. No, it doesn't count. We should not have taxpayer money funding military research in China. It's extraordinary that this still goes on.
It quite is extraordinary. Senator, you are the ranking member on the Homeland Security Committee. Has our homeland been damaged by this balloon?
I think the biggest damage isn't so much, and I haven't seen the intelligence of what we think they've gathered, which is probably damaging. But I think more damaging than even any surveillance is assessing our response time. And like I say, since we've entered into the nuclear age, there are responses that have to occur within seconds to minutes. And the fact that this administration would dither for days over a balloon, I think gives pause to us about how well we're protected and whether or not they have the ability to make decisions that would have to be made in seconds or minutes. So I think by probing our defenses this way and showing a level of ineptitude that is, I guess, surprising, it isn't good, as far as telegraphing this to the rest of the world. And the thing is, if you're going to shoot it down finally when it reaches the Atlantic Ocean, why didn't they shoot it down when it crossed the coast into Alaska, in a remote part of Alaska, or even before it got into Alaska? They had to have seen this coming. And if they didn't see it coming, that's even worse. So, we will have hearings on this. And as we're already in talks with the Democrats, we should have bipartisan hearings on this. And I think ultimately we will. But, if we can't detect a balloon, we're in a world of hurt as far as defending this country.
Real quick, Senator, you have been raising your hand about debt and all of the reckless spending of this government for a long time. Has anything changed in terms of your feelings on defense spending, given these provocations from China as we approach this massive debt ceiling debate?
No, I think the number one threat to our national security is our debt. We have a $31 trillion debt, and that does include $850 billion we spend annually on the military. The curve on spending in the military has been going up, dramatically. If you are serious about the deficit, you have to look at military, non-military, and you have to look at everything that's on the budget, including mandatory spending. If you don't, you'll never balance the budget. But I can tell you, were you to take spending back to before the COVID bailouts, in 2019, before we started the $1 trillion of COVID bailouts, if we went back to that level and we froze spending for 5 years, you would actually balance the budget. No cuts, simply a freeze if we go back to pre-COVID spending levels. So there are ways to do it. The good news is divided government is the best time. When Republicans control the place, they're sometimes as bad as the Democrats. When Democrats control the place, it's terrible. Right now, mixed government, the debt ceiling only goes up with Republicans doing it, and we are demanding significant spending reform.
Well, we are talking about that in the next segment. Senator, it is good to see you. Rand Paul joining us this morning in Kentucky.